Good luck. Let's just keep going. I just want to listen to narratives video. That's not how
What did you give before?
Oh, you're right. Oh shit, are we going down the same line? Oh, I got destroyed. Hang on. I've definitely tried to slide on with some modification. Just two ways. I played the egg. I think the egg played the black. No, the egg was originally the black. Oh, is that right? That one gets out, so it was not egg. There you go. I think it's supposed to be really strong. No, it's not strong. Yes, that's what I like to hear. Get rid of that dog split bishop. Yeah, I just didn't know. Should I cross it? This one. I didn't even think of that. Should I cross the king side this time? What do you think? The king side. No, I mean, he has a very tough. He has a walk with a lot of them. I'm just thinking, like, positionally, I'm much better. But dynamically, I have
Like you have two central pawns, so you try to get total through d4.
exactly. I have further ability.
So long term you should be like strategically good, right?
But the pawns are bishop is so good, but you're screwed right.
Oh, that's true.
No, so I don't need the white squares. Where are you going? That was probably the best. Probably not everybody picked. It is losing, but it's really nice. Actually, it's not faster. This position is good. Oh, no. Yeah, this is a good position. Sort of forward. This is plus 3. This is still in report. Yeah. Oh, you can. Yeah, it's like 19. Once we get some trade done. Yeah, I did that. Yeah. That is actually good. What am I going to keep it up? Nice.
I still like the other 85. Like, I think 96 is the most big. Yeah, that's pretty true. Hopefully,
I hate increments.
It is a bit.
I hate increments.
Is that just winning?
I'm playing like I have.
It should be right.
It should be me somewhere. I just don't see it.
Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
You gotta get to where you can.
It's actually taking this time. Oh wait, why did I control that?
I should have just blocked it. I'm sure I gotta be a good pick because I didn't do you need my game is on G6.
I don't think so.
I'm not too close to this time. Yeah, I can move on to my business.
Give it a try. Is it just quick?
Alright, well, I'll just get back to
It's
it.
like the main thing is that this is on like a phone, so it has to go to like,
Yeah.
like it's,
Yeah, I played that.
I don't remember.
You could just go here.
Like the moment I get the full play, I'll be like, like if you
Yeah, no, that's very
comes out, right?
Yeah. It's not.
The main,
I thought it was
it's the main one.
Yeah, I didn't just like
You have to get the full.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that that was there. There's no way to stop that. But yeah, obviously there was a way to stop that. Okay, that's actually.
Yeah, I was trying to, I was originally planning to move like a, but this is actually so strong, this is different thing.
I'm sure it did.
It's like, I pushed this one. Yeah, you could have taken it in this game. Yeah, I wanted to play, I wanted to rotate because this thing basically
On the main one,
so I just traded I should just have so many better trades.
I should have lost everything.
Yeah. But then my queen's gonna slowly like this gets my voice. I didn't want to. How would I have even got there? I couldn't have knocked you out. Like this knight is just.
I won last one.
So
Oh, you won your last one.
so I had to.
I should have lost.
But I just.
Oh yeah, you have the point.
Like that. Don't worry. It's round 2. So I
Did you get a point? I'm pretty sure you do. So we must win. What color were you?
What are you studying? What are you studying? Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
This side.
Yeah, I think that's also sad. I think you should all.
We're on the same side. We're sitting next to you. Same again. So we must be ready to go on the same. Same thing.
And they're not the best. I think social. Yeah, true. Yeah, interesting. Why would I pay just to lose? I can just play a few online games. Yeah, right. It's just.
I found so weird. I found my chance was streaming.
can't do it on time because it's going to be drawn time. It's a drawn time, right? First time I've had it. It's not worth it. Oh, I should put that 1 hour. That's all to my travel time for with it. It's the longest my game has lasted. At some point, I was just looking at the time. I don't like it.
So as you could see, the game ended in a draw. Just like to give a light analysis of the game now. Of course, we opened with the modern with e4 g6 and we had the following moves, and now I played a6. And actually coming into the game, I kind of wanted to play the hippo, which is this setup where black just puts their pawns like this. They put their knights on e7, d7, feeding kind of both their bishops. But the problem is against a very aggressive setup like the Austrian, where white puts 3 pawns in the center, it's very difficult to actually make the hippo work. Very often you get hit with like an aggressive f5 at some point with the pawn e6, and it sort of tears apart the whole position. So what I actually went for after a6 was this setup where I played b5. And this is the whole concept of the so-called opening I'm playing, which is the Tiger's Modern, where it looks like black is very severely neglecting their own development, and also the center just looks like a complete mess what we're doing. But basically the whole concept is to eventually develop the pieces such that we play c5, counterattack the white center, and very often you can sort of get some structure just putting some random moves on the board that somewhat resembles the Sicilian Dragon, where the structure is basically identical. But okay, our opponent Ian in the game, he went a4, and he mentioned somewhere around here like he saw some Naroditsky video explaining this whole setup with white. And it's funny because I actually remembered as we were playing, and I said this to him like, oh, this feels familiar, because we'd actually had this, or it's very similar position on the board like a couple months ago at some uni Blitz event or whatever, playing this against each other. But I think in that game the difference was I actually got a pawn on a5, and I might have done that by in this position playing a5 myself, whereas in this game I went for an early knight f6 before playing a5, which allowed Ian in this position to play a5, sort of clamping down the b6 square, not allowing myself to play a5, protecting b4 like so. And also I should mention, why am I playing c takes d4? This looks like I could just play knight f6 immediately, but the whole point of doing this is that e5 is quite unpleasant in this position, because after knight d5 c4, my knight gets kicked out of this lovely d5 square, so that's why I take on d4 first, and now knight d5, and the knight is a lot more firmly planted on the square. But nonetheless, in these positions, I think black is probably still a bit worse objectively, because white just has this very nice base advantage. But I try to make the most out of it by maneuvering my queen around, playing bishop c6, trying to trade it off with bishop b5. Saw the following moves: takes, queen b7, and this was quite an interesting moment. It was also a moment I spent quite a bit of time on, as you could have seen, where it might look like I was actually sort of blundering a pawn with e takes d6, knight takes d6, but this was actually quite intentional. I wanted this to happen because in a lot of these positions, white just has a very annoying space advantage. The pawn e5 is locking my bishop in, but if I can give up a pawn and actually sort of open some lines now, I felt like I had a lot of compensation, my pieces are very active, and white's sort of losing the thread of things, so I would have been quite happy to see this. Also in this position earlier, white could have gone to a similar thing with taking and then taking on d6, but again, this was all intentional. I wanted to allow this. And actually after the game, we were briefly talking, he said that he didn't notice the pawn on d6 was hanging the first time around, but when I played rook d8, he then noticed he could take, but correctly judged that he probably shouldn't take it, because I mean that's what, for one, I want him to take, it's quite obvious, but also just from an objective point of view, like whatever I want being the side, right? Like practically speaking, it's probably not the best decision, but what he did instead in the game I don't think is much better, actually, e6, because this also sort of gives up the e5 pawn in some sense, and now frees up black's position a lot. He went for knight g5, went knight f8, and after queen h3, I played knight f6, giving back the pawn, but I probably could have just played queen d7 in the game, to be honest, hanging on to the guy, and I think I'm just better here, actually, like knight f6 next, maybe. h6 is a little bit shaky, but it could be playable, just kicking the knight out. And to be honest, I don't really see what white's next move is going to be. Maybe rook e1 or something to meet knight f6 with, like, you know, taking on e6, but even still, like, in this sort of position, I can take on d4, and I think I'm probably just better. Unless there's some sort of, like, f5 thing with counterplay, which, to be honest, is actually quite plausible. But rather instead of all this stuff, I thought what my opponent probably should have done was just to play rook c1, maybe the other rook as well, who knows. But bringing one of the rooks to c1, I didn't really see what my next move was going to be, to be honest. Because also one thing to keep in mind is that if I ever bring a rook to c8, well, one reason I was so hesitant in doing this, for example, like why didn't I play rook fc8 instead of rook d8, was that to make this whole pawn sacrifice work, I need to be able to recapture, and I can't do that if I have a rook like this on c8, because then this is a very annoying fork, right? And after rook a c1, well, also, I'm sort of out of waiting moves. Rook f d8 in some sense was a waiting move. I don't really know what I'm going to do to wait any longer. Like, if takes, now knight takes d6, I can't go to c6, for example. That's sort of unpleasant. And if I take at any point, I don't really like this sort of change of structure. It really feels like, to me, just white's opening their file with their pieces. Anyways, what happened was queen h3, and we had a bit of a mess unfold in the next move. So, takes, king g7, d5. A bit of a strong move, to be honest. I actually kind of missed it. I could take the pawn on b2 potentially, but this sort of feels a little bit annoying, so I just played rook c8 instead, and f5 happened. And I thought a little bit about just playing g5 to close the king side. Perhaps this was quite strong. I ended up playing rook c5 though, and after f takes g6, queen takes d5. Immediately, I was sort of regretting my decision a little bit because, like, well, what I was regretting actually very quickly exited my mind after my opponent's next move. But what I was sort of thinking was, oh no, I don't want to go into this. This is an equal endgame, or maybe not equal, but equal material. And I thought I should have better. But then he just shocked me actually by playing this move, rook takes f6, which I definitely saw. Didn't, but let's pretend like I did. Where the whole idea is that, okay, if I take, obviously he's a piece up, and if I take on d2, and this was another option, well, I'm just gonna get mated. There's no way I'm not, right? So I end up taking on f6, he got queen e7 check, that was his whole idea, eliminating the darks with bishop, so now he gets this and picks up my rook, but luckily I could pick his bishop up, so I wasn't without hope. And then we got to this sort of weird position where material is equal, sorry, not equal, I'm a pawn up, but pieces are equal, you get what I mean. However, in spite of having the extra pawn, you know, my pawn structure is a bit of a mess, and my king's very weak compared to white's one, which is a little bit more safe. Granted, if he gives me an extra move, I'm going to play rook c1 and mate him, but with rook f1, I can't really do that because there's like going to be queen takes f6 check and stuff, and it might even be me who's in trouble, right? So what I did was I played Queen F4, and I think there are a couple of different moves to sort of hold this. I briefly checked this with computer and was just given 0-0-0 here. Fair enough, right? Like, once black sort of holds together all the weaknesses, it's difficult for white to really do anything concrete. Of course, if they take, there's going to be back rank mate issues. So what ended up happening in the game was just a threefold repetition. Don't think there's a whole lot better than this, to be honest, because again, white sort of has their own issues on the back rank they have to deal with. Their king isn't completely devoid of issues. So yeah, fairly logical the way the game wrapped up. Definitely a few moments for both of us that could have gone a little bit better. But yeah, definitely Ian played pretty well for his rating. He's like 1700 VA or something. He's ridiculously underrated. But yeah, anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, subscribe for more content like this. And yeah, hope you guys all have a good day.